Eric, is the video on, do you know? Okay, it's 6. Okay. The video was on? Okay. I'll just wait for him to sit down. Okay, so I'd like to call to order the June 6, 2023 Planning Board meeting. First item on the agenda is roll call, and I will start to my left. Okay, are our mics working? Hello.
Riley Bergeron.
Test.
David Trask. Paul Jacques.
Stacy LeBlanc.
Tony Ferraro.
Tim DeRoche.
Amanda Garrett.
So I would like to make note that a full member, Evan Sear, is absent today, so we will be elevating Tim as associate member to a full member. So the next item on the agenda are the meeting minutes. So are there any amendments to the meeting minutes? If there are none, I will just seek a motion to approve. All right, seeing none, I seek a motion to approve.
So moved.
All those in favor? Or need a second? So moved. All those in favor? Okay. Okay. I wasn't in here either. Okay. All right, good. Moving on. All right, so third item on the agenda is the public hearing zoning text amendment. So this is the text amendment to eliminate the income standard from all areas outside of the Lake Auburn watershed overlay. Just kind of as a point of order, we did have an original text amendment. We are now calling it Proposal A. That is on the website and also within our packets. We reviewed that during the May 9th meeting. We reviewed it, we digested it. We also made comments and suggestions that then went back to staff, right? And so the output of that May 9th meeting is now Proposal B. So at this meeting, we are reviewing Proposal B. Those suggestions, those edits, and if in your staff packets, if you look on page 2, you will find the differences between Proposal A and Proposal B. Proposal B is noted in red. So that's really what our focus is on today in terms of the text amendment and the public hearing. So I will turn it over to staff.
Thank you. As you said, there's been a number of public hearings leading up to tonight, and tonight's intent is to consider the latest version, Proposal B. This is as directed by the council to consider alternatives to the income standard, to eliminate the income standard. We've had a number of drafts leading up to this. The first one was just to strike the income standard. Proposal A, as you mentioned, was discussed and a public hearing was held at the May meeting. Proposal B has been posted since the public notice went out before this hearing and available for the public. I know that it's been shared widely, but there may be some people in the audience that aren't aware of the changes. So what I was hoping to do is just to go over the key differences and then answer any questions from the board, and hopefully you can have a public hearing.
Okay,
after that.
sounds excellent.
So key differences between Proposal A and Proposal B. Proposal B adds the definition of natural resource uses. It updates the definition of recreational uses of land to include sports field complexes larger than 1 acre in area, health and wellness centers, facilities for wedding or event venues. That was included in major recreational uses already, but it's included in recreational uses as well. We added a definition for recreational uses of land small scale. The reason for that is the larger recreational uses already required planning board approval to approve the recreational use. Nothing to do with a house, but there's special exceptions that required approval by the planning board. The direction we got was to expand the recreation, natural resource, and agricultural uses that could be used to be accessory to a house or for a house to be accessory to them. And we thought it was necessary to create an additional definition for those smaller scale recreational uses that could potentially be approved at a site plan review level without a full special exception approval. It expands the requirement that new dwellings be connected to agriculture, recreation, and natural resource uses, and adds criteria for determining whether the farm natural resource plan is acceptable. Both proposals added specification that residential development must be restricted to 20% of the land coverage. So if you have a 10-acre lot, only 2 acres of it could be used for the residential purpose. It doesn't limit the amount of land that could be used for the other permitted use, like the farm or the recreational use. But it does limit the yard and building space for the home residential use to 20% of the lot area. It expands the mentioned uses that would be included in either agricultural or forestry-based uses to include maple sugaring, mushroom cultivation, and other similar forest product uses. We've already had some public comment that you've seen that would expand some of those specific ones, more so than what's listed in the ordinance, but we listed other similar forest product uses because we know there are some that we can't mention everything that might come before us that could qualify as a agricultural use or a forest products use without limiting. Proposal B expands the handling storage of agricultural products and adds processing and forestry products, removes the provision that products must be derived from the property where the dwelling is used, is cited. We have always allowed for processing of agricultural products on the property where something is produced. This would allow for some processing to take place in the ag zone that is products that are brought in from other properties in the surrounding area or even surrounding towns. It adds natural resource uses. The comp plan called for an expanded set of uses that could be connected to a home. Natural resource-based uses are one of those. Small-scale recreational uses are listed again as a permitted use, number 18 in 60145A, based on the direction of the comp plan, but also the direction of the board at the last meeting. Special exception recreational uses are recreational uses that are not included in the small scale. Proposal A added some environmental protections that were discussed at the last meeting to avoid steep slopes, wetlands, valuable wildlife habitat that's mapped by Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, prime soils, and other agricultural soils that are either prime or significant is the term that the state used. Those remain in Proposal B. They were in Proposal A, but they remain in Proposal B as well. We did strike based on direction last time, we did strike in Proposal B lot size distinctions for dwellings to be located on lots between 6.1 and 10 acres. So if the lot is legally existing, it could qualify for a home connected to a natural resource, agricultural farm, or recreational use, even if the lot is less than 10 acres. Proposal B adds the word lawfully, just to specify that they were legally created prior to that date, that they were not in violation at the time that they were created. Proposal B prohibits new dwellings in the Lake Auburn watershed. That was at the direction of the council. Originally, it remains in the proposal that these changes to the ag zone do not affect the ag zone lands in the Lake Auburn watershed. They only apply outside of that watershed. You do have some public comment that was delivered ahead of this meeting for either by email or in person tonight. You'll hear from more members of the public tonight for public comment. We are asking the board to please make a recommendation tonight. That recommendation can include recommended changes to the draft, but I know the council, after the multiple public hearings here, would really like to see a recommendation come from the board tonight. So staff's recommending that you consider Proposal B and provide a recommendation at the end of the public hearing.
Okay, so a point of order and question for staff. If there are recommendations to the text amendment, does that have to then go back for further public comment?
So if there are recommendations, then the council can consider those, because this question came up with some of the comments that we've received so far. Some of your recommendations, if they were to be if some of the recommendations that are laid out in some of the public comment, if those became part of the board's recommendation,
Okay.
and the council chose to incorporate them, then they might necessitate a new public hearing at the
Okay.
planning board. I think there are some that are not substantive enough to require a new public hearing, but I think that that would be in the hands of the council to decide which pieces of your recommendation they chose to move forward with.
Yeah, and so also a point of order as well. I think some of the public comment that we got maybe was received an hour ago. So I am not entirely sure. I know many of us have day jobs, so I'm not entirely sure folks have had a chance to review it all. So I think there's also, that piece of things to consider as well.
And I think if you haven't had a chance to consider something that was just received, we could either make a copy or you could pass that along to the council. So it's definitely considered as
Okay.
public comment when they're deciding how
Okay.
to move forward.
Does the board understand that? Okay, perfect. All right, does anyone have questions for staff?
A couple of questions. One, Eric, you'd mentioned something along the line that we can't list all uses as defined. How do we account for questions around, well, what about this and how about this? And it's not specifically laid out, but is that agricultural? So is there a formal process to request that something be considered even though it's not listed specifically in the ordinance?
Yeah, I think that the definitions are broad enough in that they leave it open to uses that are commonly either, if it's a farm, one that came up is beekeeping. I think we could straight face that is part of an agricultural use. Another one that came up was a suggestion that we add language along the lines of in other similar agricultural related uses. I think our definitions are broad enough that we could do that from an interpretational standpoint. If staff was trying to interpret a proposal and we felt that it was outside of that, then there's a couple of processes where it could be considered. Somebody could propose to amend that definition to include something that seems to lie outside of what is allowed. Board of Appeals is empowered to do interpretations, so they could go to the board for an interpretation, or any decision that staff makes in issuing or not issuing a permit is appealable to the Board of Appeals. So there's a few processes: either change the ordinance, ask for an interpretation from the Board of Appeals, or appeal a staff decision to deny most likely a project.
Okay.
So-
I just didn't know if we're better off saying, as some of the suggestions came through, or other permitted uses or whatever that some of the proposed stuff was, or do we have it covered in other areas? Because if we do, then I'm not going to be chasing changes if we've got other ways to do it in those areas.
I think we have it largely covered. The way that they're written, I can't say that there'll never be one that comes up that we don't think falls within that definition that, the council or planning board or Board of Appeals might disagree with, but we have a process to explore that if we need to.
Okay, any other questions for staff?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. The floor is yours.
Well, I'm certainly happy to have other people ask. But I've asked this before because it's a very keen interest of mine with regard to the Taylor Pond watershed area, and wanted just to understand the safeguards that are in place, because one of the changes, certainly along the Lake Auburn area, we were specifically asked to make sure that any changes that we did not encourage or allow for additional growth in those areas, to make sure that we had wording in order to do that. Are we able to assure that we are doing the same thing in the Taylor Pond watershed area with these changes, or would the changes that we're proposing potentially increase the opportunity for development in the watershed?
So I think that the proposed changes increase the opportunity for a house tied to a wider variety of uses everywhere except for the Lake Auburn watershed. That would include the Taylor Pond watershed. There still is a large minimum lot size of 10 acres. It has to be connected. We've reestablished that connection, I think, in this draft to a farm, agricultural, natural resource, or recreational use. It's still a significant limitation, but if you didn't feel it was enough, you could certainly make that part of a recommendation that these changes not happen in the Lake Auburn or Taylor watershed. That would be up to the board. But it is still pretty limiting. We have lot sizes in the Taylor Pond watershed. I know as small as 10,000 square feet. There might be a small portion that could go smaller than that. So a 10-acre lot size is still very limiting for a minimum lot size. More so than the lands closest to the pond largely already allow a much smaller lot size and no connection to farming or agriculture for a house.
But those aren't zoned agricultural currently, are they?
Correct.
Okay.
Certainly within your purview to add a recommendation.
Okay. So I think I would be more comfortable in including both watershed areas into where Lake Auburn is mentioned, but that, I guess I would need to propose a motion to amend that when the time is appropriate.
Okay, any other questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, I will seek a motion to open public comment.
So moved?
Do I have a second? All those in favor? All right, I know, I keep looking at you, Amanda. All right, so we open it to public comment for purposes of discussing the item number 3 on the agenda. So this is around the ag text amendment change only. So we would ask you to come to the podium. You have 5 minutes in which to speak. And of that, we would ask you to state your name and your address.
Hey there. Are we ready to start this, or?
Yeah, we can,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
We got the timer going.
Sounds good. Chris Carson, Jakes Road, Auburn. I'm here representing a group of people. We have a couple of people that are representing this group that is identified as the Save Auburn AGRP group. We'd like to thank the city staff for all the hard work they've put in on the Proposal B and in general with regard to the agricultural zone. They've done amazing work. Our group would like to formally endorse Proposal B. We encourage the planning board to pass Proposal B. We think this is one of the most even-handed and well-written agricultural approaches we've heard in a number of years. Proposal B complies with the comprehensive plan, which Proposal A does not. The 2021 Auburn Comprehensive Plan divides the city into 3 categories: growth areas, limited growth areas, and no growth areas. The comprehensive plan places the ag zone in the no growth area, writing that largely undeveloped areas should remain undeveloped for at least the next 10 years. These areas include land with significant development constraints that should not be developed, as well as land that is not appropriate for development at this time, but that may be designated for development in the future. Specifically regarding residences in the ag zone, the comprehensive plan says residential uses should continue to be limited to accessory residential development as part of commercial, agricultural, or natural resource use, not traditional farms. That's exactly what Proposal B does. The comprehensive plan continues, the criteria for determining when an accessory residential use is permitted should be based on updated standards that consider the economic realities of today's commercial agricultural activities, including outside sources of income and part-time and small-scale commercial operations. Again, that's exactly what Proposal B does by eliminating the income standard. Proposal B is the only proposal before the planning board that eliminates the income standard while retaining the association between residential construction and intended land use. So under Proposal B, agricultural zone residents with lots greater than 20,000 square feet, which is the minimum lot size allowed to install a septic system, may apply to build a residence based on a viable agricultural, recreational, or open space plan. It's exactly what the comprehensive plan says. Proposal B achieves the goal identified by numerous city studies and administrations of only replacing the income standard when a viable alternative is identified. And that was actually something that you guys identified early on as a priority, I believe, in one of the earlier planning board meetings, that you didn't want to replace the income standard until you had a viable alternative. I think the city staff's done a wonderful job of providing you with that alternative, and we wholeheartedly endorse Proposal B. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Stephen Beal, 575 Johnson Road. I totally support Mr. Carson's remarks and his approval and endorsement of Proposal B as prepared by the staff. The staff did a lot of very hard work on this, and they gave the agriculture group the chance to participate in discussions for possible improvements. And we had two very good conferences with the staff, the latter of which was just yesterday, which is why we didn't get some of these suggestions to you in the packets, because we didn't want a small group that had been talking with the staff to preempt the larger group and run roughshod over the entire group. And we had a meeting on Sunday which confirmed the larger group's approval of these things. Very quickly, however, because this has been done very rapidly, there are several particulars in which the ordinance really should have some amendment in order to accomplish the purposes for which it's intended. The very first one in our list of proposed suggestions would have the words "or 2 acres, whichever is less," put after the 20% limitation in the amount of a lot which can be utilized for residential construction. Because there are some lots and parcels in the ag zone which are like over 100 acres, quite a few of them. And if you just had a 20% limitation, you don't want to see 20 acres of residential building in one single complex in the ag zone. So that's why we limited this to, would propose the addition of 2 acres, whichever is less than the 20%. The one at the bottom of the first page, there is a suggestion to amend the limitation on cemetery size, which presently reads to 20 acres, but the planning board and the council have recently approved a new form of cemetery in the city, which is called a conservation cemetery, which needs to be only 10 acres in size. So we have an amendment at the bottom of this page which would add that language to incorporate that 10-acre feature for conservation cemeteries. The one at the top of the second page, the reference, this is in section 146, the dimensional limitations, the words adding at least 20,000 square feet. That is a minimum limitation even after the old 6.1 to 10-acre standard was eliminated. There were very few lots in that size. But Mr. Blay of the staff correctly pointed out that you can't go below 20,000 square feet on a septic system per the state plumbing code. So we would propose that there be a minimum of 20,000 feet or slightly less than a half acre for residential construction pertinent to an agricultural use in the ag zone for that reason. Otherwise, if you didn't have that minimum, you'd be right down to 0. There are 9 lots in the ag zone less than 20,000 square feet. The others are words that we felt would greatly help the understanding of the proposed ordinance, particularly numbers 2 and 3 here, the words including other permitted agricultural, those words after the word farming, to make it clear that it's farming, other permitted agricultural, recreational, or natural resource uses. We think a lot of these are just grammar improvements or wording improvements to make the ordinance enforceable and clear, so you don't have constant people quibbling with the staff about what something means. Thanks very much.
Thank you. All right, any other members of the public that would like to come forward?
My name is Pam Rousseau, 745 West Auburn Road, Auburn. I am very delighted with B, and I really hope that you consider adopting that with the changes that Mr. Beal recommended. And I also like the idea of adding Taylor Pond watershed.
Okay, any other members of the public that would like to come forward?
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address the board. I'm John Cleveland. I live at 183 Davis Avenue in Auburn. I'm speaking here in total support of proposition or proposal B this evening. I want to speak again to reemphasize the importance of adopting an ordinance that is consistent with the comprehensive plan, because that is a critical element of what you have to do. So let me first cite what the state law says. The state law directs you to adopt ordinances that are consistent with the comprehensive plan. It says specifically that a zoning ordinance must be pursuant to and consistent with the comprehensive plan adopted by the municipal legislative body. In this case, that would be the city council. You can find that in Title 38, Chapter 186, subsection 3, Section 4552, sub 2. That's the citing that you must meet. Your staff in the May 9th meeting did a very good job of outlining some of the points that need to be met to be consistent in looking at your own comprehensive plan in relationship to the plan. And I'll reiterate that I'm speaking in favor of proposal B because it's the only option you have before you that meets all of the requirements set out by your own planning board. So in point number 2 that they listed, it speaks directly to your future land use plan, and it says the land use plan reaffirms a central policy of prior land use planning in the city, namely that development in Auburn should grow from the inner core out, from the older established neighborhoods. This policy was originally set forth in the city's first comprehensive plan over a half-century ago and was continued to guide the city's land use planning since then. It is because growth out from the downtown core and older established neighborhoods allows the most efficient utilization of city services. This plan discourages leapfrog development in the outlying sections of the city where city services are not available. And I'm reciting from their report. In point 3, they point out in the future land use plan, it reaffirms a basic land use objective that Auburn should grow out from its historic development core and not leapfrog into the rural areas, also called suburban sprawl, which is not desirable for Auburn. In point 4, the agricultural district is intended to preserve and enhance the agricultural heritage of Auburn and protect the city's natural resources, open space, and unfragmented wildlife habitat. In point 5 of their memo, they state the proposal does not maintain a direct connection. The proposal has to maintain a direct connection with the land. The housing has to maintain a direct connection for agricultural, forestry, recreation, and open space. And this proposal also discourages subdivisions from occurring, whereas your other proposals did not do that. I also want to refer, and I believe you were handed a copy at the May 5th Planning Board meeting of the Hackett versus City of Auburn suit in 1985. This is a lawsuit where the court ruled where the city council on that date, in that year, adopted land use proposals that were inconsistent. and it made very clear that you had to maintain the consistency. And if you take a look at the basic fact base of that decision versus other proposals, you'll find this proposal B doesn't have the same problems that did. I'm very familiar with it because in 1985 I was the mayor, and I had urged the city council not to do the extend development in the rural areas because it was inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. They chose not to follow that direction. Suit was filed, and the city lost the suit. So this proposal B removes that situation where you would be placed in being inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. So therefore, I strongly recommend that you endorse Proposal B as the best plan that you have, a good compromise, and it's a plan.
Thank you, sir. Your 5 minutes are up, but we do appreciate it.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. I hope that you'll support Proposal B.
Thank you. All right, any other members of the public that would like to come forward to talk about the Ag Zone text amendment? Okay, seeing none, I will seek a motion to close public comment.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Excellent, motion carries. So at this point in time, if you have any questions for staff, any deliberations amongst ourselves, and then apart from that, what Eric had said, Mr. Cousins had shared, that there is, on the table a suggested motion, and we would look to provide a recommendation to City Council with or without amendments.
I like the, I'm wondering to how much, how many of these comments that were made by absent member Seer could be added in, if they have to be added in specifically one by one as amendments to this proposal, or forwarded along as a recommendation that the council considers?
Sure, no, that's an excellent question. So, yes, Mr. Seer did provide public comment. He's not here today to be like a full board member, so that's going to be considered public comment. So if those are public comments that you feel like should be considered by City Council in a favorable recommendation, then we would fold those comments into the motion, correct?
Anything that you've heard tonight or received for public comment, if there was something that you wanted to incorporate into your recommendation, you certainly can do that.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, does it have to be, we'd have to specifically read each thing, or could I say the public comment included?
I think if you are specifically proposing a text change, then you would want to read the text that's proposed. If you want the council to consider those generally, I think you could just reference it as what was included in the.
All right, what's that last piece? If you want City Council to consider it in general?
Depending on how specific you want to be. If you have specific language that you want incorporated into the ordinance as part of your recommendation, then you should read that out loud, tell us the specific language. If you generally want the council to consider those in making their decision, I think you could just reference it as the public comment.
As a public comment, okay.
Tonight.
Should I begin? Because there's a couple of things that are specifically written here that I would like to have included. That's what I guess I'm asking, is if I have to make a motion and then say, I make the motion for option B, but included this text change, this text change, this text change, or if I can go through all of them and make it as a general.
If there's specific text, you should reference and say the specific text.
And or if you want to just consider the public comment in totality, you can include that, correct?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Well, I would, in considering this proposal B, I would include the language that both Mr. Beal and Evan said, that we use, quote, 20% or 2 acres, whichever is less, on the lots larger than 10 acres as a text amendment. I would also want to include if you're reading along, number 4 here, the no certificate of occupancy shall be issued for any such residence until satisfactory evidence of the requirements of Section 60-145A1A and Section 60-145A1B2 have been presented. And I'm going to read all of these because I also think it should include in Section 60-145A1D, quote, which the lot upon which the residence is constructed fails to meet the requirements set forth in Section 60-145A1A, or the residence fails to remain accessory to an approved plan in accordance with Section 60-145A1B2. And I would also include the thing regarding the frontage, where we could amend the text to say, and measuring less than 250 feet in width in the street frontage along a publicly accepted street. So those would be the things I would include as text changes following the recommendation.
No, excellent, perfect. And I'm just going to make a comment as well for people watching in the room and for the board. We received this literally an hour ago. So if you see us looking at this, and we had a chance to review it, but we're not, we've digested this for months upon months. So a lot of this stuff is committed to memory. So I did see you, Eric, write all of that down, and I do appreciate that. I think that you caught the vast majority of that. What I would ask from you, Riley, is, and were you reading from Evans?
Yes.
Okay. He numbered them as well. So can you reference the numbers?
So if I were to make a recommendation or a motion, do you think that it would be sufficient enough to reference the numbers that Evan provided in his public comment because I think if it's a specific text amendment, I should say it, not just say the specific public comment.
But I also want the board to know as well, right? So I want them to be able to quickly reference it.
Yep.
And it may be that if you make a motion to include all of those, there may be board members that like one of them and not another. So it may be preferable to make a motion to amend. You should start, if the board's inclined, with a motion to recommend approval of option B, and then make individual motions to add amendments to that.
Okay.
And I would suggest that you do those one at a time, so the board decides on each
And
one.
we can read on
rather
them.
than as a
Okay, I
group of
appreciate
them.
that guidance, Eric. Okay.
I think,
So, go ahead.
point of order, just do we make the motion on the amendments first and then vote for the approval of what is amended, what is approved?
I think there should be, if the board has consensus that generally option B is the way to go, I think there should be a motion to recommend approval of option B with amendments, and then those amendments be proposed before you vote on the motion as a whole. But there should be an overall motion on option B first,
Yep.
that's being discussed and amended before final vote.
So I will be looking to see a motion for option B.
So for clarification, making a motion to recommend proposal B with amendments, and then we discuss those amendments after.
Why don't we,
Thereafter,
I can walk us through this, yep. So why don't we first get that first motion on the table, and then I can walk you guys through the rest of it.
I make a motion to recommend amending Section 60-1 of Article 1 in general as shown in Proposal B, Section 60-145, and Section 60-146, Article 4, District Regulations, Division 2, Agricultural Resource Protection District as shown in Proposal B, and amend Section 60-952 of Article 12, Environmental Regulation Divisions 4, Lake Auburn Watershed Overlay District, also known in Proposal B.
I second.
Do I have a second? You have a second? Okay. Do I have discussion?
I'd like to suggest some amendments. So we'll do them one at a time, then vote on them one at a time? Is that the... I suggest an amendment for Section 60-145A1A to include the language 20% or 2 acres, whichever is less, in reference to lot size.
Second.
All those,
Yeah, I would suggest you call for, unless there's discussion about that amendment, call for a vote specifically on the amendment.
if there's any discussion, if seeing none, then I will entertain, do I have a second? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, passes unanimously.
I'd like to offer another amendment that in section 60-145A1B2, all amended to consider all permitted agricultural uses rather than just farming.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, motion carries.
I would also like to include an amendment for section 6145A1B7 to read, not be cited in any portion of a parcel that has been classified as being, (A), enrolled in the state Maine Farm Tax Land Program with the last 5 years, or.
All right, do you have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor? All right, so I've got the vast majority in favor. Do I have anyone opposed? You oppose? One, just, okay, excellent, motion carries.
I'd like to offer another amendment for section 6145A1C. It only references section 645A1A, but there's also requirements for the residents later in that section. This could be accomplished by reading, no certificate of occupancy shall be issued for any such residence until satisfactory evidence of the requirements of section 6145A1A and section 6145A1B2 have been presented.
All right, do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? All right, motion carries.
I'd also like to offer an amendment for 6145A1D. For it to read, which the lot upon which the residence is constructed fails to meet the requirements set forth in section 6145A1A, or the residence fails to remain accessory to an approved plan in accordance with section 6145A1B2.
All right, do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? All right, motion carries.
I'd like to offer another amendment to section 6146(1) to read, and measuring less than 250 feet in width at the street frontage along a publicly accepted street.
All right, do you have a second? Or do we want discussion?
I'll second.
All those in favor? All right, motion carries. Yep.
And lastly, I'd like to offer an amendment on section 6146(3) to read a maximum depth of 30% or 400 feet, whichever is less.
Sorry, was that maximum depth of?
Yes, sorry, maximum
30%.
depth in conjunction with a maximum setback in feet. Then require the use of whichever is less.
Second.
I'd like to hear if staff has any ideas about the implications of that, or.
So the intent of that section would be, just for clarification, and I think we can go to the tape to make sure we get it correct as well, but would be not to have the really deep spaghetti type lots, so that the maximum depth of the lot would be 30% of the width. Is that?
Eric, do you mind just speaking? I'm having a hard time hearing you.
So I just wanted to clarify the intent to make sure I understood. So the maximum depth of a newly created lot, or would it be the maximum depth at which the house could be set in the newly created lot would be 30% of the width?
I think about where the house could be set in the newly created lot.
Okay, so if the depth of the lot is 1,000 feet, then 30%, you can't site the house further than 300 feet, say,
Yeah.
the lot.
Yes.
Usually it'd be smaller numbers, but,
And then, or 400 feet, whichever is less was the.
or 400 feet, whichever is less, and that's the same text that was provided as public comment tonight. Okay.
All right, do you have a second?
Second.
Okay, so all those in favor? All right, motion carries. Any other amendments?
I'd like to propose an amendment found in Mr. Beal's public comment. In section 145A3, the words firewood processing and Christmas tree cultivation should follow the words maple sugaring.
Second that.
I want to say, do I have a second? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, motion carries. Any other amendments to the favorable?
I'd like to,
Any other, no, because, no.
yeah, there was one other one that I think, because of our conservation cemetery, in section 145B8A, the words "except for approved conservation cemeteries, which shall be at least 10 acres in size," should be added.
So,
Second.
and I
Okay.
think we can note that, that will be incorporated into the ordinance by a separate action that the council already took, but I think that adds clarity to make sure it doesn't get missed.
Okay, perfect, excellent.
Thank you.
So all those in favor? Tony seconded. Okay, excellent, motion carries. Any other amendments to the favorable recommendation to proposal B to eliminate the income standard from the ag zone?
I got one left.
Okay,
I would like to amend where reference the Lake Auburn watershed to include the Taylor Pond watershed as well.
all right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? All right, motion carries.
Who is the second on that one?
Yep. Okay, so this was a very complex motion, just for all those participating and watching. So at this point in time, I want to make sure that we get this correct. So Eric, we have a motion on the table. We have amendments that have been moved, approved by the board. Do we need a final motion to kind of tie it up in a bow in just a very basic, we've got the motion with amendments, and if we're all in favor?
So yeah, if you, you have a motion on the table to pass a favorable recommendation now with those amendments, and
Okay.
the board should take a vote on passing the overall ordinance with those amendments.
Okay. All right, so do I have a? Okay, yes.
Second.
Well, I think you would just say your motion with the amendments, but okay, excellent. No, just say the motion with the favorable motion with amendments.
Make a motion to approve the B option with said amendments.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Excellent, motion carries. All right, on to the next agenda item. I'm going to take a little sip of water here. All right. So the next agenda item is a public hearing special exception site plan review for JSC 18 LLC. They're proposing a city-owned parcel of land at 186 Main Street. The proposal includes a 5-story mixed-use building, 3 floors, 18 units, with a restaurant and brewery space. So I will hand this over to staff.
Okay, thank you. Just going to pull up this staff report real quick. Okay. I'm going to pull up the plan set. Okay, so this is a public hearing on a proposed new 5-story mixed-use building that will be made up of 3 floors with 18 units of multifamily apartment housing and 1,118 square feet of retail commercial space and 1 floor with a 118-seat restaurant and brewery space. This should be reviewed under Form-Based Code T51 special exception. It also falls within the the floodplain overlay. So with this proposal, the board has received an original large plan set. It's a big packet with a bunch of plans attached to it. It has also received some updated plans, including some updated easement plans. You also tonight received a recent color-coded easement plan that is involved with this project too. So I'll go into that in the background. So 186 Main Street is currently a vacant site owned by the City of Auburn. It is in the general development area within the shoreline zone and also falls within the T51 form-based code district. It is, in the staff report, staff has laid out really the elements of form-based code, the requirements that would need to be met in order for this project to meet the requirements. And you can see in that this project does meet all of the requirements in form-based code. So you would see a table with some red writing to I'll pull it up here. So you'll see a table with some red writing that shows the proposed dimensions and measurements of the new development and then what form-based code asks for. So you can see the comparison right side by side to each other. The space will also include 24 parking spaces and one accessible space as well right in front of the building. They have also, as part of their application, submitted a flood hazard development permit application and a traffic movement permit application. And so those will all be considered in the review as well. And we have received both of those. Miller Street will be realigned as part of the project because part of it includes a temporary and permanent easement for the use of the proposed development, including some right-of-way space and space to work in the meantime too. There's also a sewer easement in there for Auburn Water and Sewer District to be able to access. So Miller Street will be realigned and as part of a realignment of a street that needs to go through council, and we are aware of that process, and really no change in public rights and access would be affected there. So that would be accomplished through the appropriate process following 23 Maine Revised Statutes, section 3026, subsection A. And the plan, so it includes additional rights of use and maintenance and access easements, including 3,240 square feet in addition to the existing property. Within the existing property is about 0.16 acres. The site plan shows sewer easement and temporary construction easement. Like I just said. And all city comments have been met at this point. So we don't have any comments that have not been addressed for this proposal. And our suggested motion comes with some conditions. The suggested motion is at the very back of your staff report, which is stapled to all the other additional submittals there. So the suggested conditions are to really just update the registry of deeds with the realignment coordinates for that road. And receive the NRPA permit by rule by Maine DEP, the flood hazard development permit, and the traffic movement permit. So that is that's all we have, and we have the applicant here in case you all have any questions for them too.
I was just going to say, is the applicant here? Do they want to come forward and address the board?
Hi, thank you everyone for being here, and thank you to the planning department for all the help they've given us this far. My name is Tanner Goodine. I'm with Sebago Technics. I'm the lead design engineer for the project. I'm here on behalf of Julie Curran from Great Falls Construction, who is the applicant, and I'm available to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, so we just heard from staff. We have the applicant. Does anyone have any questions?
Just a question for staff with regard to the 188 space. Is that because of the amount of residences, and that's just a ratio that we go by?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, excellent. So no more questions for staff, no questions for the applicant? Oh, yeah, absolutely. So
Very good job. It was very detailed.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so seeing none, I will seek a motion to open up public comment. Do
So moved.
you have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Excellent, perfect. All right, so step to the podium. You have 5 minutes. State your name and address.
Pam Rousseau, 745 West Auburn Road. I'm just curious exactly where this is, because I do know that in 1989, the area in downtown Auburn area became a historical district from Drummond Street past Elm. And I was just wondering how close this was to it was added to the National Register of Historic Places, that area down there. So is that before that area or in that area, or I'm not really sure exactly where that de-embarkation of the National Registry of Historic Places is. It's just a question.
Okay, perfect. Great. All right, any other members of the public who would like to come forward and address this one project? Okay, seeing none, I will seek a motion to close public comment.
So moved.
All right, do you have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? All right, so we do have a question from the member of the public, Pam Rousseau. Is this close to a historical?
There are some buildings in that stretch listed as historically significant. This is, if you look at the map, you can see Drummond Street is across from the site, just to the north. So this is right at the edge of the district that Ms. Russo just mentioned.
Okay.
There aren't specific requirements in our ordinance for how this building is constructed based on it being there. We do have some renderings in the packet that give you an idea of what it will look like.
All right, perfect. Do we have any questions for staff after hearing from the public and the applicant and the staff readout? And if not, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. I know where this vacant lot is. I've just kind of hard to decipher. I see on the map updated 5/22/23, the one with all the pretty little colors on it. The Auburn Riverwalk, I'm correct in understanding that the parking for this development will not interrupt the Auburn Riverwalk. Is that correct?
That's correct. The parking against the Riverwalk is essentially what's there today.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions? And if not, I will seek a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the proposal pursuant to Chapter 60, Division 14, Form-Based Code T51, Chapter 60, Article 16, Division 2, Site Plan Review, Chapter 60, Article 16, Division 3, Special Exception, and Chapter 60, Article 12, Division 2 and 5, Floodplain Overlay District and Shoreland Overlay District SLO with the following conditions. Filed approval, Androscoggin County Registry of Deeds for road realignment of Miller Street. Filed approval, Androscoggin County Registry of Deeds for easement to Auburn Sewer and Water District. Filed approval, Androscoggin County Registry of Deeds for rights of use, maintenance, and access easement to Great Falls JCS 18 LLC. Filed approval, Androscoggin County Registry of Deeds for rights of use, access easement to Turson LLC. NRPA permit by rule by Maine DEP, flood hazard development permit, and traffic movement permit.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, do I have a discussion? Seeing no discussion, I will call for a vote. All those in favor? All right, motion carries. Excellent. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is a public hearing zone map amendment. So Auburn voters submitted a petition to amend zoning of a 15.5 acre parcel of land at 737 Loring Avenue from urban residential to multifamily suburban. And I will hand it over for staff for a readout.
So you have a staff report. We've talked a little bit about this area through the adoption of the comprehensive plan and a previous discussion about the adoption of the T42 and T42B zoning districts. This parcel is located off of Loring Avenue. It is in the urban residential zone. It's adjacent to an area that's in the multifamily suburban zone. And the comp plan characterizes it as a traditional neighborhood development district. We have been looking at other areas characterized as traditional neighborhood development district for consideration for T42B. We did receive this petition. Multifamily suburban zoning is adjacent to it currently, and right now, the urban residential zone does not meet some of the criteria of the comprehensive plan. So I think this lot has been sort of set up for transition to something that is more flexible for higher density housing. We received this petition that suggests multifamily suburban. Staff thinks that either a change to multifamily suburban or to T42B would be bringing the zoning in line with the comprehensive plan to allow for more flexibility with the density. What's before you tonight is a proposal to go to multifamily suburban. That would increase the density to be consistent with the comp plan. Right now, the maximum density of two-family homes is 6 units per acre. The comprehensive plan calls for this area to be a density of up to 16 units per acre. Multifamily suburban would allow for that. The area is adjacent to the Houston Farm Conservation Area. There's a lot of preserved land in that area between the Houston Farm Conservation easement for the neighborhood and some land that's owned by the Androscoggin Land Trust and land that they hold easements on. We recommend that the planning board hold a public hearing. I know there are members of the public here from that neighborhood, seeing the people in the audience. And ultimately, we recommend that the board, in taking a step towards conformance with the comprehensive plan, could support this as an amendment to the zoning ordinance. So we would encourage you to make that recommendation.
Okay, are there any questions for staff before we head over to the public comment?
What is there now? Is it just an open field?
So there's an existing two-family brick home that's been, has not been well-maintained. I think it's been vacant for a decade or more. I'm sure some of the neighbors may be able to speak to that, but I think it may have been even closer to 20 years that it's been vacant. But it was proposed for a number of years ago for a workforce housing project. And then there was a lot of public feedback about that, and the developer decided not to pursue the project. We do think that this is an infill opportunity that the comprehensive plan supports. Most of it's vacant land, but it does have that existing two-family home on it that would either be rehabbed or removed as part of the development of a parcel eventually. But this is really consideration of the zone change, and we don't have a site plan to think about at this point.
Are there trails there, though? I feel like there's snowmobile trails and...
I don't know if there's a snowmobile trail across this parcel. I know
Yeah,
that
I sold a couple houses back there, so I feel like I
Yep.
just remember that.
Yep, so it sounds like there is a snowmobile trail that the property owner has allowed to exist on the property.
Okay, any other questions for staff?
Is the reason that we're considering multifamily suburban as opposed to T4 2B because the surrounding area is zoned?
So I think it's more so because it's an adjacent zone that exists already in the neighborhood, and the petition asked for that. And I think at the time of the first discussions, we hadn't fully developed T4.
Who originated the petition? Is it, was it someone within the community locally, or is it someone else?
So we'll have comment from the person who circulated the petition. The petition is really coming from the 25 signatures that are on it. I don't know if the person that asked for those signatures lives in Auburn or not. But we could, I know that they're supposed to be here tonight, so I'm sure we could find that out.
Did you mean who asked for the zone change?
Yes.
Yeah, the zone change is initiated by the petition, the 25 signatures. I do know that the person that's looking at purchasing the land is supposed to be here tonight, so I'm sure they would tell you where they're from.
Okay. Okay, so if the applicant, the petitioner, wants to come forward.
Good evening. My name's Aaron Shields. I'm here with my business partner, Matt Chamberlain. First of all, I want to thank staff because when we started looking at this property to purchase it, it kind of had been sitting there for quite a while. We had heard that there had been some projects in the past with workforce housing or affordable housing, and we met with staff to figure out what was going to be the best use for the parcel of land for the city of Auburn. It's, unfortunately with land use, its use is not always going to be agreed upon by the people who live around it. And I understand that, there's a lot of people here that don't want to see this beautiful parcel of land developed. But we also can't lose sight of the fact that not just the city of Auburn, but also the state of Maine has a real need for good quality housing. And we're not going to do that by putting $700,000 or $900,000 homes, on 2-acre lots out in the rural areas. We need to be able to put density in the areas that have services like public water, public sewer. The kids can walk to school, and you've got a fire station or a municipal building right adjacent to this parcel. So we appreciated their help. In most cases, in almost every community that I know, the urban residential or the urban core zoning regulations are a dream for developers. And currently, this is the urban zone. In order to increase or at least get a greater flexibility of housing types, that urban zone didn't allow for flexibility of housing types, but all of the area shown in the green adds for more flexibility, and that's for multifamily. Multifamily doesn't mean 40-unit buildings, with all affordable housing. We continuously, as we've spoken to some of the abutters, that's the first thing that comes up. We're trying to build a high-quality development here that is going to be able to have single-family, two-family, and multifamily. In order to do that, the zone change would be necessary currently. You mentioned the like we call the form-based or flex zone. If the planning board in the city was further along, we're completely in favor of moving forward and developing this with the form-based zone. I think you called it like T4 something. My apologies, I don't really know what the zoning term is of that one. But at the same token, it was suggested that may be a ways down the road. there's the changing of certain political parties coming in the future in Auburn, and we didn't want to get caught up in that, in case that might be the case. So, you know, our best bet was to approach a handful of people that we knew in Auburn, taxpayers, citizens, voting members, and we had the petition signed for the amount of people that we needed to have done, and it's brought forth to you for consideration. I do want to comment that either way, I mean, we would like this zone change. Either way, at some point, the property is, you know, it's going to be developed. And we've got to come back in front of the planning board for that. And again, I understand that the neighbors currently enjoy a beautiful scenic farm in their backyard, and we get that. And we hope that whatever project we're going to do, you know, will be a high quality project. So, thank you for the consideration.
I have a question.
Sure.
So do you not have a plan yet?
No, we don't have a plan yet because that would be kind of speculating. We could create a plan with, you know, 1 family, 2 family housing with the current density, but I mean that would be pure speculation because our goal would be to you know, to put multifamily on there.
You said affordable housing. What's affordable housing mean to you?
Well, I'm a builder as well, so affordable housing I think is really an indicator of the region. But I don't, even as a builder right now, I don't consider any new single family homes hardly affordable. And you can't. I mean, you know,
You
can't
said
go,
affordable housing, so I was just curious.
What's that?
You did say affordable housing, so I was curious.
I said we would not be doing affordable housing.
Oh, well, there you go.
Okay, I wanted to be clear about that. Affordable housing has a stigma to it, and you know, it has very strict income regulations, and it's near impossible to build that now. If I build a single family home, you know, on a 10,000 square foot lot, it's not likely going to be, you know, whether it's me or any other builder, it's not likely going to be that affordable for unfortunately, for a lot of Maine residents. It's a sad reality. So, you know, in order to get a housing type that the local people can afford, you've got to head in that direction of a 2-family or a multifamily. Sorry, ramble on here, but just last week there was a news report on one of the local Maine channels in Brunswick that the reason why they're building so much multifamily housing is because it's the only thing that a lot of Maine residents can afford. So.
And you're not building affordable housing?
We're not building
Okay.
affordable housing, correct.
It was stated that there was potential snowmobile trails. Would you continue to allow that?
Right through the middle of our project? No. No.
Or in the back?
If we could fit him in there, absolutely. I've had some experience in the past of, you know, residential subdivisions with snowmobiles. I mean, there's a liability issue. I think there's a component to a lot of the regulations for recreation area, and if we were able to incorporate that trail, whether it's a ATV, whether it's a snowmobile trail, whether it's a walking trail, into the recreational area of a project, absolutely. Yep. I mean, you have hundreds of acres, I think, nearby. That's all recreational land. We don't want to limit, you know, access to that. We just also don't want to create a liability issue.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I do. I know the 25 signatures was achieved, but I also took note, it took 39 signatures to do that, 14 of which weren't even registered. And as I look through, so that's 36% of the people that signed the petition weren't even registered. And as I look through the addresses, vast majority of these people that do not live in that neighborhood. Is that correct?
That would be correct. And to your point of the high amount of people that were not included, it's because they're in attempts of getting this, it was misunderstood of whether or not they were taxpayers or citizens or sorry, registered voters. And what then I found out is that they could be not registered voters and still be taxpayers. So that
Okay.
was my error in,
But like, I'm correct in when I see this, the vast majority of the people that, whether they're even valid or not, are, some of them are in East Auburn. You know, that they're not even from the neighborhood you plan the development. Is that correct?
absolutely, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yep. Okay, so at this point in time, I will seek a motion to open public comment.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay, excellent. So, again, step up to the podium. You have 5 minutes. State your name and address. Public comment is now open for the zone petition change of parcel ID 211-282. Okay.
Thank you very much for hearing me out. My name is Bruce Ryu, 85 Mary Carroll Street, and I didn't even intend to say anything, although I do live in this neighborhood. But when that gentleman stood up, he didn't give his address. And then we find out that he has a 25-member petition. And my understanding of the 25-member petition to change a zone was put in our charter so that somebody who wanted to build a non-conforming building on their parcel for, an additional housing or an addition to a garage or an addition to their house, and it was non-conforming, they go around and they get 25 neighbors to sign this petition, bring it to the planning board, and present their case. And it doesn't sound like this was the intent of the 25 petition rule, that somebody maybe from out of town comes in and is all of a sudden going to change zoning in our neighborhood, which is all residential, to put in multifamily housing. So I hope that will be part of your consideration as you move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Maggie Taylor, 63 Loring Avenue. I also did not plan to speak, but here I am. So this is not just a beautiful farm. We're not just defending this because it's something pretty to look at. This is green space that needs to be preserved. There's not much of it around, if you haven't noticed, because we live in a nearly urban area because of this urban sprawl. We're not worried about an eyesore. We have 2 rivers that are converging in this area, so we need to be very cognizant and careful about the nature in the area. There are turkeys and foxes and deer and all kinds of wildlife using this field. And then there's the people in the neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhoods that use this field for snowshoeing, snowmobiling, hiking. There are trails. My family's been benefiting and enjoying this area along with our neighbors for years now, and my parents owned the property before me. We could easily get a petition with greater numbers of people who actually live in the neighborhood and the surrounding area. So that also brings me to the question of, do the people on this petition stand to benefit financially from this rezoning and development? Because we need to look at the intent and the impact here. And I think many of my neighbors would agree that this smells funny. There's something fishy behind the intent here. And so that would be my key concerns, are the environmental impact, and then looking at why this is being pushed so hard, who stands to gain from it, what do the people who actually live in the area want to happen, and why it's not just about an eyesore or, having a little more density in the area. And then, I had one more point, but I think I just lost it. Never mind, I digress. But those are the points that I had top of mind, so thank you for the time.
Evening, Mike Adler, 82 Loring Avenue. I am totally against changing this zone for some of the following reasons. This came before us a few years ago, and it was fought against. But couple things to note here. This property only has one entrance. It's landlocked. There are no two ways in and two ways out, unless there's a deal with somewhere somebody sold somebody some land that I haven't heard about. The other thing is, where you see the blue on the map up here, this is all wetland. Right there. All these streets, right here, drain that way. That area has flooded before. They have changed the culvert. It's helped a little. But that's all wetland. Some of the other things that they're not taking into consideration here, if any of you have been up on this side of the Avenue here, right to South Main Street, that has to be rebuilt. It is horrible. The septic, you can't, they don't want to do septic, they want to do city sewer. City sewer is over here. The only other way to get to city sewer is somewhere from here to South Main Street. Public water is available off of Loring. That's absolutely true. Now, one of the other things that was taken into consideration with the last project was to get the city sewer up to Loring Avenue, they had to do a pump station. Auburn Water and Sewer doesn't want to do another pump station. They're too expensive. So kind of keep that in mind when you're thinking about that. The other part of this is that the extra load on traffic, but who's going to maintain the roads in here? If you have one road in, who's going to maintain it? How are the fire trucks going to get? Yes, we have a substation right there. They still have to go up and around because they can't get in. One of the other things I wanted to touch on here was in Article 1 of the zoning provisions, general provisions, 1.1-1, the zoning districts and regulations as set forth in this chapter are for the following purposes: to promote the health, safety, convenience, and general welfare of the city's inhabitants, to improve the city and beautify the city, protect the property values, avoid environmental blight and pollution, conserve natural resources, and protect direct sunlight for solar energy use. Now here's a good one. To lessen the congestion in the streets, secure safety from fire, flood, and other dangers, provide adequate light and air, prevent overcrowding of the land, avoid undue concentration of population, and economize public expenditure in the provision of public services, utilities, and facilities. One thing I wanted to mention other than that, years ago when the project up here by the middle school was built, everybody was seeing green because of the extra tax dollars coming in. And one of the councilors at that time had the foresight to say, yeah, we're going to get the green coming in, but the red's going to be up here because of all the extra city services. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Brandy Lemieux, 57 Loring. I just find it a little deceiving to say that it abuts that zone already when the land that it abuts is either part of the land trust or part of the farm trust. So it wouldn't necessarily be able to be zoned that way anyway.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Stainalia Kreitz. I live at 108 Loring and also have property at 69 Loring Avenue, which abuts this project. Basically, all I want to say is I grew up in the area. I enjoyed that field since I was born. Cross-country skiing, sliding, playing in the watershed down there, seeing fish. I think there's going to be issues with schooling because Walton is changing, and the traffic for our roads where there are young kids playing all the time in our nice little neighborhood, it's just gonna increase. It's the danger, number one, and the wildlife. I mean, the wildlife is unbelievable. We see deer all the time. We see fox, there's coyotes, there's, you name it, and where are they gonna go? So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Hi, Dina Chapman, 40 Vivian Street, which my property abuts from Vivian Street, this property that they're talking about. So I'm asking the board to keep the zoning as is. It's already zoned as residential, and if you can look at the neighborhood, it's all residential. It's all single-family homes. We've worked hard to be able to afford a place up there. Eric was right. A few years ago, we turned out in large numbers at Walton to shoot this project down, which was supposed to be I think they call it workforce housing now, so I don't think it's called low-income housing anymore. I think it's called workforce housing. So that was shot down, but again, we're here. If you look at the property, the brick building, that's an historic building. And if anybody knows the history of this building, and maybe somebody else can help me out with this. Back in the day, horse and buggies used to pull up there. This is a very historic building, which that I think the city should preserve. Also, we formed a committee back a few years ago with the neighborhood to get together to try to, and we spoke with the landowner, and I'm not quite sure if he's here tonight. Is he? The landowner of this. So we spoke with him, and we, as a community, wanted to see if he could break that house off with a couple acres of land, and we, as citizens, would like to buy the rest of the land, and we would put it into landlock ourselves. Now, that's speaking volumes, that how this community is willing to purchase that land out of pocket and then put it off into a land trust. So with that, I also, once again, I ask that we keep the zoning. It's already residential zoning. You want to come in, the developer, you want to come in and put some single-family homes and make it, a couple single-family, absolutely. But the main thing is the wildlife that is in this field, the children in this neighborhood, we don't have much green space left in New Auburn. And I'm talking New Auburn like where you're looking right now. We don't have much green space left. If we keep overpopulating it, we're not going to have no recreational. We're not going to have nothing to be able to do. We do have snowmobile trails. We have dirt biking trails that my children, they're all grown up, my children have used over the years. And this approaches our property. Actually, they did the zoning, what do they call that? Survey. They had 3 different surveys from the city. One goes right through my living room. The second one goes to my patio. The third one goes to my fire pit in my backyard. So yes, do I have concerns about what's going to be in my backyard, which when we built the home, we built it off the city, what they had said that the markings that we could build off. I also believe that I have a lot of friends on the school committee. There's talks about Walton School closing eventually. And it's been talked about that making those into apartments and making the football field into, and developing the football field. Where are these children going to go to school? Sherwood Heights? Sherwood Heights is already busting. What are we going to do with our children that are going to be put in, there's no schooling in that area. And I'd like to know that answer before, and with no plan put forth for us, when you say we don't have a plan, we have nothing to go on. So by changing the zoning, all that does is allow us to change the zoning, and we could all stand here, the development could stand here today and say what he wants in there. But guess what? Once it's done, anything can be done. So I know my time's running out, so I would plead with the board. Would you want this in your backyard that you've known? Stacy, you live in a beautiful neighborhood. If somebody came to you and said, I'm going to put this in your backyard, that's what I'm asking you. I'm asking you to reconsider, and please, I would recommend to the city council that we do not change the zoning. Keep it as residential. Zone it. Build on it. Thank you very much.
You were literally to the minute. For the second. All right, anyone else?
Good evening. My name's Walter Kreitz, and I have property at 108 Loring and also on 69 Loring, which abuts this project. But what I want to talk about is not anything technical, but back when the Houston Land Trust was formed, quite a few years ago, I was involved in getting that implemented from the Houston family, and I was a steward of that property for many years. And the property that was sold to the current owner was split off, I know with the intent, and I know this is nothing to do with legality, but the intent is to keep it a single family area with that brick building that we've been talking about, the historic building. And that's basically the point I wanted to make, that the intent from the Houston Land Trust and from the current owner who bought that from the Houston Land Trust, he actually owns the land that's in the Houston Land Trust now as well, was to keep that a green space for the city of Auburn.
Okay, any other members of the public who would like to come forward? Okay.
Hello, my name's Renee Cody, and I live on Dawes Avenue, which is not near Loring Street. But I just want to bring up one point that the gentleman who came with the zoning change but no plan mentioned that it kind of doesn't matter what Auburn wants. This is the state of Maine needs housing. We're in the Auburn City Hall. This is Auburn. This is the Auburn Planning Board. It's going for the Auburn City Council. I think we've already been asked to do enough for the state of Maine. We have Stable Ridge going near my house that's providing housing for people who live in Portland because the market is too expensive there. I mean, I think Auburn has already gone above and beyond to provide housing to this state, and I guess I kind of resent someone coming in saying, well, it doesn't kind of matter what Auburn wants, it's just state of Maine needs housing, so, do it. Just something to keep in mind as the broader picture of what's going on in Auburn. Thanks.
Hello, my name's Bonnie Adler. I'm at 82 Loring. And just a quick concern of ours. We don't have enough teachers. We don't have enough policemen. We don't have enough EMTs. We don't have the services to hold and care for the people we already have. Why are we bringing in more? More and more. We're behind the 8 ball on this issue. We need to address our foundation before we start building the building. Thank you.
Okay, any other members of the public who would like to come forward? Okay, seeing none, I will seek a motion to close public comment.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay, motion carries. All right, so I think members of the public have seen us take notes, and part of that is that we will address questions. I didn't hear a ton of questions, but I will open it up if other people did capture some questions that we should address and chat with staff about.
There was a question, I know it looks like you've got water and sewer up. There was a question or comment about where water or sewer is or isn't. It looks like there is water and sewer at the property, at the street on Loring, correct?
That's correct. We're basing it on the water and sewer district maps, but there is the possibility of connecting to Main Street as well, if they got permission from another property owner.
Okay, so if there's any other questions that we, okay.
Go ahead. There was questions about the school's capacity to take in new students.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that this is a request to change a zoning district. So if anything more than 2 single-family homes were proposed on this lot, this would be back in front of you as a subdivision and/or site plan review. What we're doing is working with the school department. A year and a half or so ago, 2 years ago, we went through an exercise with the school department, police department, fire department, other departments of the city. And as the council set a goal of 2,000 new units, 6,000 new residents, we looked at the capacity to provide services for those. We believe there is capacity for some additional housing units within the services that the city has. And sometimes it is cheaper to provide services to more people in an urban environment where more people share those costs. Specifically to schools, we have a shortage of children that's putting in jeopardy our state funding for schools right now, and causing the school department to consider closing some schools. So it does come with a cost. It also comes with revenues. But what we're being told from the school department is we have capacity to handle more students. And we're short on students, really, for what we have historically enjoyed for school funding.
Currently, they could do quite a bit of building on it with the existing zoning, right, with the urban residential.
They could. 2-family buildings could be at a density of up to 6 units per acre. I think the issue is that building purely 1 and 2 family homes right now is not viable economically, because you would spend more money building them than you could expect somebody to afford. So what we've really been seeing on these developments is either all multifamily. We've seen a lot. We've really been trying to encourage developers to incorporate 1 and 2 family homes and opportunities for home ownership. But I think in talking with the developer, I haven't had a lot of contact directly with Mr. Shields, but the way to afford to build single-family home opportunities is to sort of subsidize that, and I don't mean by a government subsidy, but to be able to build multi-families allows you to afford to build some single families in the neighborhood of mixed housing.
And the multifamily zone requires at least 50% of green space, right?
Yes, 50% in multifamily suburban. And I think what it does is it allows you to, especially if you use the planned unit development ordinance, it allows you to concentrate the housing units on smaller lots while preserving surrounding open space for either recreational access or open space for the residents. And that traffic, stormwater, and recreational requirements would be reviewed as part of a site plan review, but not necessarily as part of a zoning change.
Are wetlands excluded as part of that 50%?
Good question.
Can you repeat the question, Dave?
Well, there's wetlands in there, and if we're 50% of needs to be kept as green space, are we counting the wetlands as part of that 50%, or are we removing that and then looking at available buildable land and then 50% of that?
It uses the term net acreage. I just want to double check how that's defined, whether it includes wetlands.
Okay, so I just want to pause real quick while we're having this discussion. So it seems at this point in time, we're having a discussion with staff and deliberating about this. Are we all set with any questions that the public had? I want to make sure that we address the public's questions before we then move on, and after we've heard from the public and after we've heard from the petitioner and we've had a chance to digest this, we can now have a conversation with some. I just want to make sure that we've completely addressed the public's comments. Does everyone feel safe with that? Okay.
I'm sorry, I had one more about the frontage. There's, it was pointed out by someone, there's only so much frontage. Building multifamily would probably require building an internal road.
Internal road or access drive. I think we would encourage the developer to use either private road or access drive, so we're not creating new maintenance responsibilities. Net acreage excludes dedicated streets or street rights of way shown on the plan, but does not exclude wetlands. So wetlands could be part of that. I think where the board would really weigh in on that as part of a site plan review is making sure that the recreational standards are met and that there's enough usable land included in the green space as part of that.
Okay, so I think we're transitioning to like staff and discussion, board discussion amongst ourselves, so. Okay, so point of order, staff, would it be reasonable for, I don't know if any of us captured those questions from.
Was it about the historic building? Is that the?
You took notes too, right? So is it reasonable that we get those questions? I just want to make sure that we're just following order.
Sure, if you want clarification on those questions, you can absolutely ask for that.
All right, how does the board feel about that?
I'd like clarification on the questions.
Okay. Do you mind just coming forward and asking your two questions directly?
The first one is around environmental assessment, environmental impact. Has an environmental assessment been done?
Okay.
And the other one was, do the signers of the petition stand to benefit financially from this rezoning?
Okay, perfect. All right, so so her question was environmental impact to the development, and then is there a financial impact to others? So I think we know the answer to both of those questions, right? So what we're doing right now, and I'll definitely let you take over, is we are reviewing a zone change, and within that zone change allows for development. And within that development is a site plan review, which would then have us evaluate any environmental impact. So it's kind of like, it's kind of a snowball effect, but I'll let you kind of address that as well.
Yeah, the environmental impacts, including a wetland survey, would have to be provided as part of a site plan review, but you certainly couldn't expect somebody to go to that expense not knowing if they could even do the project. And I have no idea if, somebody that signed the petition is somehow financially connected to it. I doubt it.
Yeah, I mean, we don't get, whether their education, what they do for work.
There'd be a lot of people that would be.
Yeah, so I mean,
But you touched on it, Stacy. We're discussing a zone revision. There's been no application of any kind of development, no plans, nothing. And it's important that the public know that. Nothing's been presented. We have no idea what they plan to do with the property. It's simply a request for a zoning change. That's all we know.
Yeah, and I'll kind of parlay upon that too. So I mean, it's so nice. We have some really new faces here, and it's nice to see some new faces in front of us. So to that end, this material is on the website, and if you look at the staff report, it kind of talks about these petitions and the reasoning why, right? Like, is it in line with, other zones around it? Does it make sense, right, for this to move forward? So we have had these before us, and we've, had really good dialogue and discussion around it. And we've had some discussion around the zone changes, and it did make sense. My concern about this is, and why I am not in favor of this, is we have made such great strides as a board to consolidate our zones, look at parcels of land collectively, and then say, as a group, because that's what we are, we're a planning board. Like, we don't plan per parcel, we're planning for the city of Auburn. And for me, this feels like we're planning a parcel, right? We are taking a zone, we are changing it for different development. And I do know, and we know this, right, because we have these discussions with comp plan, is, we are moving forward with, other T4.2 changes and other ways for us to collectively grow with the comp plan to include the density where we feel like, and staff feels like, and collectively as a board, we feel like makes sense. And for me, and I'm going to use this word, and I know that this doesn't necessarily apply here, but conceptually in my head, it feels a little spotty to me. So that's my personal opinion on this.
Stacey, I'd like your thoughts, and I certainly am in line with them. I guess I have one question, Eric, with you with regard to, I know that the abutting land has that green zone, but when I was looking at it on the map and I was zooming out, it includes a lot of land that's not developed. So my head went to, well, why is a zone that has no development zoned in such a way that it wants, like it's crying for development, but yet no one's developing on it? And I guess tonight it was the first time I'd heard that there's actually all kinds of easement land in that area. Do you know any history behind why that whole stretch of area was zoned that way?
So I think that zoning existed prior to the easements. I could double check that by looking at the city clerk's records, but the property owner, when they developed a portion of that property with some of the development that already exists out there, chose to conserve other parts of it for public access and agriculture, neighborhood access and agriculture. And the Androscoggin Land Trust took an easement to ensure that is maintained in perpetuity. It's been an area of land that the city has considered in the last two comp plans as a way to someday connect off-road footpaths in sort of a loop around the new Auburn urban area. But it is labeled as a growth area in the comp plan, and there's a goal to grow housing to meet the goals of the city council. So staff supported it based on what the comp plan says for that area. But I think either T42B or multifamily suburban moves it from where it is today towards conformance with the comp plan, and it would be more conforming with that zoning.
But to that end, if we change a zone to then change a zone to then change a zone, you know what I mean? It's going to feel in a little bit like that.
And it is currently in compliance with the comp plan. We just would like it to be additional growth opportunity in support of future, right? Is that what you're saying?
The urban residential zone was largely the area called out to be this traditional neighborhood development district, and it calls for more flexibility on small commercial uses and more housing types where the urban res limits housing to 1 and 2 family homes. So I think there are aspects of it that conform to the plan. There are other aspects of it that need to be adjusted if we're going to conform to the plan.
I just have a couple things. So I would just be concerned with the animal, wildlife, and current recreation that's being used. With that going away, I would not want to see that. And then also just preserving some of that green space that's currently there. I feel like it's being used for a good thing right now. And changing that, I don't know if it's in Auburn's best interest.
Okay, so any other comments from the board, any other thoughts? I think what we're doing is we're moving towards a motion, right? And we've been down this road before, so we either have to make a favorable motion or we have to make a motion which does not approve with, do we have to have findings, or we can?
You should have reasons one way or another.
Reasons
Yep.
for it, okay. So either discussion or a motion.
My motion is not to go forward. My findings are that, A, if you go down Loring Ave, I really do not understand how you could fit a fire truck down there, or like the amount of traffic that would come along with a larger development for multi-families.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So just to be clear, it's for reasons of safety and traffic.
Mm-hmm. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? All right, motion carries. Okay, so next item on the agenda is the public hearing zone text amendment. So this is to increase during the general business the zoning from 30% coverage, envelope coverage, I like that envelope by the word, I'm not seeing it in here, to 60%. And increase the maximum building coverage in the industrial zoning district from 40% coverage to 60% coverage. So just as a reminder to the board, we had a workshop on this on May 9th. This was workshop, this was discussed. At this point in time, it's before us for a public hearing and the zone text amendment. So I will stop and hand it over to staff.
All right, thank you. So like you said, last time the board initiated this zone change, because it would allow for more opportunity for businesses to grow in the city. Staff thinks it is an appropriate change to make in a time past when there was such a large requirement for parking lots, which really would have taken up the majority of the spaces in these businesses. So changing the density in general business 2 and industrial really allows for local businesses to grow. It aligns with the comprehensive plan, especially the future land use chapter, that the city's development standards for the commercial development district should provide property owners and developers flexibility in the use and development of the property. The suggested increase in density would allow for more options and expansion of the site, and that aligns with the comprehensive plan. And so the current density of general business and general business 2 is 30%. The proposal is to change that density, as in the building coverage on the lot, to 60%, and the density in industrial is currently 40%. The goal would be to change it to 60% too. This is closer with several of our other districts, like if we think of T42, the maximum density is 70%, so that is that's kind of a suburban district that has a much higher density. So if you can picture what that looks like on the lot, it might also allow for one business lot to share the parking space and add another complementary business to the lot. We've also had, in your packet, you might notice there are 2 letters, one from the Community and Economic Development Director, Jay Brenchick, and another from a business owner in Auburn who would benefit from a change like this. Staff thinks it's a good change to make, and we're happy to. And after this, if you make a favorable recommendation, because it is a zoning text change, it would go to City Council for 2 readings before it would be passed. So tonight you would be making a recommendation to City Council.
Okay, any questions for staff?
Yeah, I got a quick one. To briefly summarize for my little mind, we're basically talking about what is currently the mandated footprint for a building. Like when we go to a major shopping center and it's acres of empty spaces, we're looking to curb that. Now, that could go one of 2 ways. That could mean larger buildings with less parking, or same size building with more green space. Is there a direction that the city sees that going, I guess?
I think it really depends on the zone. So what if there are certain building types that are allowed in a certain zone, then I think it would just allow for more of that lot to be taken up by those buildings. So all the zones have height and height limitations, and they don't so much have like area limitations mostly, but if they're over a certain area, then they do come to the planning board.
So this could equate to, if there's less paved areas for parking, that also equates to less salt usage for de-icing in the winter, less sand introduction and sediment into runoff because there's less space being being plowed and being treated. Would that be correct?
Yeah, and I think more potential for buildings that add more taxable value in a given developed area already.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so to that end, right, from a zoning perspective, just parlaying off the conversation we just had, right? So like, this is already zoned, right, for business and industrial use. So from that perspective, right, that's what that's usage is for. It's just allowing for greater use of that. And it's my understanding as well that from an Auburn perspective, we are one of the only localities that have such a small percentage. Some are 100%, right? So, I mean, we are so, from a percentage wise, like, we might be the only one that's out of 30, so.
And I think you could force an existing business to think about moving to another lot that might require the construction of new roads. This allows them to grow more on the site that they're already at, where we already have the traffic, we already have the infrastructure. And they make better use of their land.
We actually did speak to a business owner who was seriously thinking of needing to leave Auburn if they weren't able to expand their business. They were at the capacity and they weren't able to acquire more land from a neighbor to meet that 30%.
I see this as a good thing.
I had a question. Our recommendation to remove parking spot requirements for commercial zone, for this zone, has been codified by the city council?
Yes, yeah, the parking requirements are gone for the commercial uses.
Yep. Okay, any other questions before we go to public comment? Okay, I seek a motion to open the public comment.
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, great, motion carries. Okay, so podium, 5 minutes, state your name and address.
Good evening, my name is Joe Tardif. I'm here representing Pre-Hung Doors LLC, which is located on 353 Riverside Drive. I'd like to support the passage of this proposal. Very specifically, we have acquired this business about a year ago. We've expanded our capacity within our footprint by nearly 80% with our output. We've added 8 employees, which isn't huge, but it doubled the size of our staff. We're looking to, and we have the business within our group of companies that we own, just supplying ourselves with materials. We have the ability to more than double our current capacity, which would be theoretically another 12 to 14 people employed in that one area. It's a great thing. We've got the space. If I can't, I have to move. I have the business. I have the work. I want to be able to stay in the community that we're in, to be able to maintain the staff that I have. We've got fathers and sons who work there now. We want to grow that. We have the space, and we'd like to stay where we have been. Again, we bought the company from a gentleman who built this business here in town, I want to say nearly 30 years ago, and we'd like to continue that growth. Thank you for your time, and please consider proceeding.
Okay, thank you. Any of the members of the public like to come forward? Okay, seeing none, I'd seek a motion to close public comment.
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, excellent. So we didn't have any questions. So any questions for staff? And if there are no questions for staff, then I would seek a motion.
I have a quick question. Why was 60% chosen versus 70 or 75?
Was that chatted about in the workshop?
Yeah, we looked at other zones. We also didn't want to ask for too much and have the whole thing denied.
You shoot for the moon, and then you agree on lower.
Yeah, there's no magic to 60, but it was a significant expansion over what is currently allowed.
If the board were to recommend a higher percentage, would the city see a problem with that?
I think it could go higher. I think that when you look at the, any parking that is required by the business, much higher than 60, probably most people wouldn't take advantage of it in that zone because it's a very vehicle-oriented zone for the most part. But I wouldn't see a harm in it being higher either. We would look at each site plan and make sure that the use has what they need, not to impact the surrounding properties.
Thank you, Eric.
So with what Stacy had said earlier, how is Auburn compared to other cities? She had said like some cities are at almost 100%. Where does that leave us with what Tim said, like potentially asking for a higher percentage?
I'm going to look up other general business and industrial zones and see if we can find that.
So we have some zones that allow for a higher lot coverage than the 60 already. I know when John was working on this proposal, he did look at other areas and came back with 50. We talked about it and thought 60 was better. But there are communities that are in that range from 50 to 80%. In a lot of other communities, but it depends on the zoning district. We have some that are lower than this. We have some that are higher, but general business and industrial are our most flexible commercial zones in the city, and I think raising it makes sense.
And
Can I ask what other businesses are in that zone?
So Center Street, Mall area, Minot Avenue is general business 2. Industrial is more, parts of Washington Street are general business, parts of them are industrial. Outer Minot Avenue has some industrial, like by our airport, Tam Brands, a lot of, that's the largest industrial user in the city, but really our mall area and business corridors are most of our general business, and then out by the airport is the most typical industrial.
Okay, any other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I make a motion to make a favorable recommendation to the City Council to amend text to Chapter 60, Article 4, Division 12, General Business, Section 60-500, 2, Division 13, General Business 2, Section 60-526, 2, Division 15, Industrial, Section 660, 579 to allow for a total lot area of 60% of commercial or office building density.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion?
I was going to make a motion for 75%.
So that would be an amendment to his motion. Yeah.
How do we handle that?
You would make a motion to amend.
I make a motion to amend the motion to raise it to 75% of commercial or office building density.
Okay, do I have a second? I do not have, do I have a
second?
No second? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, motion does not carry. So we're back to the original motion, which was Riley's motion at 60%. So I had a second? We had a second? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, motion carries. Okay. All right, so the 7th item on the agenda is, I feel like pretty easy, right? So it's an extension, so we have 607 Lewiston Junction Road LLC requesting a 1-year extension of an approval. So I'll hand it over to Steph real quick to give us an update, and then we can have discussion.
Yep, so for some folks on the board a year ago, you remember that this is the Auburn recycling facility on Lewiston Junction Road. And they, at the time, were advised that they didn't need, when they applied for this, they were advised that they didn't need an air emission license because of the kind of equipment they're using won't cause the kinds of emissions that they thought would need a license. But later on through the project, they have learned that the shredder does require an air emission license. So that licensing is just taking up some more time, and they haven't been able to start within that 1-year period that is allotted after we approve a project. So they're requesting an additional year from that original expiration, which would bring it to June 28th, 2024. I believe that they're going to have no problem securing the license. They're already underway with it. And yeah, I do think it's a pretty straightforward request.
Any questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, I will seek a motion to open up public comment. Oh, no, there's no public comment. It's just an extension. So I will seek a motion to either approve or not approve the extension.
I make a motion to approve a 1-year extension until June 20th, 2024 for approval under Section 601308 for 7 ± acre development of Auburn Recycling Facility, 607 Lewiston Junction Road, LLC, with conditions, 1 through 8 named in the corrected approval letter dated 7/5/2023.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, motion carries. All right. So the next item we have on the agenda is a review planning board policies and procedures. So I know that this has been on the agenda for quite some time, and we've had a pretty packed agenda over the months. So I will open it up and say this, right? So this is something that we do, on a, yearly basis. We're a little bit behind the 8 ball only because of the other agenda items that have taken precedence. But to that end, and correct me if I'm wrong, staff, but we did have Sally and council review these procedures. There have been some updates made. So the ask of you, board members, is to review this. Know that this has been reviewed already by staff. It's been reviewed by a city attorney. And familiarize yourself with it. Also come if you have any suggestions. I know that I already have some as well. And then we will bring this back up for discussion and review. Really kind of a housekeeping item, but just kind of some direction, because I know that we've really not had dialogue and discussion around this item. I'll just pause real quick and see, staff, if you'd like to add anything.
I think that process works for us.
Okay.
If you did have comments that you wanted to give us tonight that we could incorporate for the next meeting, we're happy to do that, but that's entirely up to the board. If you want to take a little more time to digest it.
I have one comment, and I would just, open it up to the board and see what you guys think. But I would like to review limiting public comment from 5 minutes to 3 minutes. So that's just my. You got it circled too? Yep, there you go. Perfect. And then my other item that I would like to, and it's under meetings. I don't see anything for. I'd just like to talk about, like board involvement, and this is just something for us to consider. I actually don't want to get into the weeds on it right now, but board involvement when the board member is not in attendance. So maybe we can kind of consider some language around that. But those are just my only 2 thoughts. And again, that's something that I'm going to kind of just on my own go through. So, perfect. All right. Okay. So the next item on.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Your public comment with city council meetings and school board meetings, what's the time limit on those for public comment?
City council is 3. I don't know about the school board.
I'm not sure on school, but I know that 3 is consistent with council.
Yeah, I spoke at a school board meeting once, and I think it was 3 as well. I think it's important to mention that I saw the same thing, and I agree as in regards to continuity of public speaking. I think all boards should probably be allotting the same amount of time. Why do you get 5 minutes at one board meeting and only 3 minutes at another? Mm-hmm. So I think the 3 minutes across the board, that's a big reason that I felt the same way. I just wanted to put that out there.
Sure. Perfect. No, I appreciate it. Okay, so at this moment, I would seek a motion to open up public comment.
Motion.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay, motion carries. So I'm opening up public comment. Do you have anyone in the public that would like to come forward?
You have 3 minutes.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Hey, it's not passed yet. Is this about specifically the policies and procedures?
No, this is just like general public
Okay, can I
comment at
talk
this
about the
point.
policies and procedures real quick?
Sure.
Okay, great, just
Yeah.
making sure. I don't want to violate the rules. So, so about a year and a half ago, I think, I brought a matter from the planning board to the ethics panel through a 25 signature petition. And they did make recommendations to the planning board to update their policies and procedures to avoid ethical conflicts in the future. So I really hope that'll be considered, and I myself will be reviewing them and hopefully commenting if I don't see anything. But I would also just be a quick advocate to keep the 5 minutes, because I realize that it makes meetings longer, but these matters here are a lot more complex than a council meeting. And for example, when you bring in an objection about an ordinance violation, there have been some recently that have been brought to Superior Court, and they wouldn't have been able to make their full argument in 3 minutes because these ordinances are very complex. So I think the planning board is in a unique spot to keep the 5 minutes. But other than that, I just hope that some of the ethics panel's recommendations would be considered when reviewing these. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other members of the public?
Stephen Beal, 575 Johnson Road. I'd like just to support the statements that Mr. Smith just made in regard to keeping the 5-minute standard for planning board comments. And his remarks are right on point. This is the board at which the spade work is done, where the first investigations are done, where you dig into details about soil types, traffic patterns, things of that sort. The council appearances are more perfunctory because there you're seeking an approval or disapproval of an item that has supposedly already been thoroughly vetted at this board, frequently on more than one occasion. And so because this is the place where the hard work gets done, it does take more than 3 minutes to present some of these very complex issues, particularly with regard to multifamily, big development projects, various kinds. I urge you to keep the 5-minute standard.
Thank you. Any other members of the public would like to come forward? Okay, seeing none, I will seek a motion to close public comment.
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, excellent. At this point in time, we just have 2 more items on the agenda. Just some quick miscellaneous items that I know staff's going to just brief us with, and then we can do an adjournment.
So Lake Auburn discussions, we provided a summary on May 1st, I think it was, to the city council. I really look forward to bringing those back to the planning board. I think they've been strengthened since the last time you considered them. Adding a prohibition on animal farms and new single-family homes in 73% of the watershed. Really hopeful that, and maybe some people are watching the planning board meetings, any chance we get to talk about these, staff wants to make sure that people know that there are additional changes. I think this is one of the strongest protection proposals for any watershed, let alone Lake Auburn being alone. I think it's it modernizes our standards for any development that does occur going into the future, but it also significantly limits development that can occur in the future as opposed to the current standards. So I think it would be really short-sighted to look at what we've been dealing with in Lake Auburn and say that we should just keep doing things exactly how we've been doing them because it's working. The lake is at serious risk, and I think the proposals that you'll be considering have the potential to better our position. Whether it can counteract the effects of climate change, who knows? But I do know that the package will limit development beyond what's currently allowed. It will require a higher standard for wastewater treatment, and it already does require a higher standard for phosphorus treatment that can only be better than what it will be without those changes. So we look forward to talking through those. And I hope people will take another look at them if they formed an opinion 6 months or a year and a half ago when we were having these discussions. The protections proposed are even stronger now.
And I was just trying to look up an email from Jimmy Corbin about this next piece. I just want to bring this before the board because 405 Center Street has slightly modified their design. That was the 21 unit, I think it was a 21 unit two building project off of Center Street that we reviewed just a few months ago. And this is the site plan for the new building. So it's the same amount. So really the building has, the look of the buildings, the design has changed a little bit. Also the arrangement of, I think the grading has changed a little bit as well. But it's the same number of buildings. The drive entrance is the same. We don't see any change in safety. But really we wanted to leave it up to the board's discretion whether you would like to see this this project again, or if you think that staff should review this again at the staff level.
Nice. I think the way that the ordinance is drafted, it gives staff the ability to do it, but I think this is kind of one of those that's at the boundary of where that line is drawn, so we didn't want to overstep that.
Do you have a quick overview, Catherine, of what their initial proposal layout was?
See if I can find it real quick.
As Catherine said, it's the same number of units. We still get the pedestrian improvements along Center Street, the access points in the same location. The buildings are shaped differently, and they're both along one property line instead of one building along each side of the property line.
Do you know what their reasoning was?
I can find that real quick. I know I was sent an email about it, so.
I know they priced out the grading and really extensive retaining walls that were part of the original proposal. I don't know if ledge was part of that, but I know that the grading costs and retaining walls were a major part of it.
Yeah, I remember the retaining wall discussion was a pretty big discussion.
Yeah, I have this email here. So the new buildings and layout may be proposed. This is from Jimmy Corbin, who is the agent of that project. The new buildings and layout may be proposed because there are concerns about architectural costs of the custom buildings as well as marketability of the units facing the road on the approved plan. The new concept utilizes more familiar square buildings that are set back from the road, providing more room for landscape buffering. Though the layout has changed, the net site calculations remain largely the same site coverage, parking spaces, etc. Yep, and I'll pull up the site plan from the other one.
For me, I guess it's a substantial, it's a big enough change for me to want to see the full plan and to understand, have they modified their lighting ideas? Have they modified vegetation? All the things that we've been looking at and talking about and analyzing, I think that it's worth a review.
I agree, Dave. It's almost as if it's a whole new project.
Is this the building that had caught fire on Center Street that they're rebuilding?
Yeah. So this is the original layout. You can see.
Okay, so just real quick, are we, from a miscellaneous item, are we talking about whether we want to bring this forward to,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
All right, so
whether you
does
wanna
everyone
see it
feel like they
again.
have a good understanding of what the ask is?
I think we have the authority to make that decision. We didn't
Okay.
want to make a decision that would upset the board, so we're looking for feedback before we decide. So
How do you feel about the changes?
I think it's really pushing the boundaries of what staff is allowed to approve for changes to the plan.
So you're saying it feels like it's pushing the boundaries. I'm hearing some favorable thoughts about having it come to the board, so I think we should put it on the agenda.
I'd like to see it again.
I'm sorry?
I'd like to see it
Okay,
again.
perfect, yeah. And then we can go into like the details of the site plan and all of that at that point in time. Perfect.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, and then I think the next item is just upcoming zoning discussion.
Sorry. Sorry, I had one on the previous, I had a question on the previous item. In the packet that was sent out on page 4, there's reference to, based on peer reviews of the city intends to use a conservative line that both FB Environmental and CM agreed drains away from the lake, graphic attached. There was no graphic attached when we got this. Where can I find that graphic?
We'll get that to you. I know it's in the packet for the May 1, 2023 City Council agenda, but we'll email it out to the board.
Thank you.
Okay, so from an upcoming zoning discussion, so was this part of the upcoming zoning discussion items?
No, that was just one that
Across your
came-
desk?
Yep.
Okay,
yep.
no, perfect. And I do appreciate that. I understand that things come in very last minute as well,
Right.
so yeah, perfect. Any other items like cross your desk that you feel like we should?
I don't really. I think,
Okay.
I mean, with the T42B zoning changes, bringing back to area A, B, C, D, and the watershed, I think those will be pretty substantial over the next few months. And I think we're going to see the cemetery come back, the conservation cemetery, but that probably won't be until August.
Okay.
So that's coming down the pipeline in a
For
little
that
while
zone
too.
change in there, they're going to come for the site review. Okay, makes sense. All right, so I think we're good. I mean, at this point in time, I think we would just entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Motion to adjourn. All those in favor?